Welcome back, Flyers Nitty Gritty fans, to Getting Gritty with It with your host, Yariv Wolok, my partner in crime, as always, Vasili Gianarakos. How are you, my friend?
Doing really well, Yariv.
All
I
right.
actually, got a new puppy this weekend,
Mm-hmm.
so I'm on a little bit of a lack of sleep because of him, but he's such a cute little guy, so it's all good.
Yeah.
But you know what? Like we're over the really busy period right now in terms
Yep.
of hockey, the hockey offseason. We had the draft, it's come and gone. We loved it. Just in terms of like so many things to talk about. Also, free agency come and gone. It's pretty slow right now on the news front, but there is still, some good stuff for us to dig into here. So it's gonna be a fun
Sure.
one.
Yeah, and I think there's still like the Rutger McGroarty story still hanging over, and obviously we just had Dev Camp, so there's some stuff to talk about. It's gonna get real slow at the end of July, and then August, especially August, will be most likely very slow. We'll probably have like a Mitchkov announcement, or at least like press conference of some sort at some point, maybe in July, end of July. Again, I was kind of thinking about it. I was like, oh, you want to get him over here earlier, but if he's moving his life, it's the off season. Most players aren't here. I don't think it's necessarily like get him here this week type of thing. It's like, yeah, you're moving your whole life. Like, let's figure it out. Let him do it right. He can take English lessons in Russia for now if he needs to or whatever. But, they will want to get him over here relatively early so he can join the players that are at dev camp or I'm sorry, that are at the training facility over the summer. And I know Zamula is there. I know Fedotov is there. We've both seen pictures. So, you want to get him acclimated. He's got a couple guys who already speak Russian. There'll be some cool stuff to happen over the off season, but it's gonna get slow. We'll fill it in with guests. Obviously we'll have Steve back on at some point in the off season. And then I don't know, I'll reach out to some other people. I'm sure we'll get some other folks to kind of join us to keep the conversation going. But for now, be ready for that lull. Okay. Before we get started, just want to remind everybody, please like, subscribe, follow us on iTunes, on Spotify, give us a rating there as well. Hit the notification bell for notifications on YouTube so you know when these episodes come out. And please subscribe if you have not subscribed so far and you're listening to this podcast. It's the best way to support us. So please subscribe to our YouTube channel. It's a humongous help. We truly appreciate it. And our subscriptions have gone way above 1,000 so far and growing. Just having people reach out to us now about partnerships and sponsorships and all this stuff. So it's awesome. And you guys are to thank for that. So thank you all so much. You guys are amazing. Also want to give a shout out to our sponsors, Jim Steaks at 4th and South. Make sure to go get yourself a cheesesteak from Jim's. Again, they are reopened as of May 1st. So it is summertime. You are on South Street at some point. Go get yourself a cheesesteak from Jim Steaks. And also a shout out to Summit Public Adjusters, 215-752-0560. Go to them for all of your insurance adjustment needs. Have them double check your insurance company and check the claims. Make sure that they are accurate. They can be your best defense against insurance companies. 215-752-0560. And also, just want to give a brief shout out to our new partner, Sports Spider. Guys, if you're tired of searching multiple websites for sports news, sportspider.com has you covered. They collect the latest articles, videos, and podcasts from the web and organize them by your favorite teams. If you want to stay up to date as possible on the Philadelphia Flyers and the NHL itself, hit the link in the description to check out sportspider.com. Again, the link is in the description. So make sure to check out SportsSpider. Again, they are a partner of ours now, and they're trying to be like a Bleacher Report type of thing where they aggregate. They have a podcast section. They have everything. Pretty cool site. Make sure to check out SportsSpider. Okay, let's get into the news segment. So I want to start doing this more often just to kind of let you guys know what you're getting into when you start listening. So we have news on some player signings. We're going to do training camp impressions. We're going to talk about the rebuild of the team. That seems to be a hot topic on the internet. A lot of people in full on panic mode somehow at this point, but we're going to address that. We're going to talk about the youth of the team, which is a topic Vasili brought up, which I really like that idea. That's been going around on Twitter as well. And then, we'll talk a little bit about what the lines could be this year. I'll pull up Puckpedia because I have fully moved on to Puckpedia at this point. And we'll go through some of the lines. I put stuff together, Vasili. We'll look at them. We can talk about it. But I think unless there's any real changes, I think we kind of know what they'll be. So I don't think that'll
Yeah,
be.
and it's fun to do some like riffing over
Yeah,
lines, right, and some general
yeah.
conversation. That'll be a good
Well,
discussion later in
the
the
re
episode.
I also want to show the Phantoms. And Bolton is not in the system yet on Puckpedia, so he's not on there. But I think there are a couple more signings coming, unless they
Yeah,
just are
some
relying.
rumors Cooper Marody might be resigned.
Okay, yeah,
Came up on
exactly.
Twitter, so
Okay, I didn't see that. That makes complete sense. So we'll dig into the Phantoms a little bit. We'll talk about Sawyer. We'll talk about the lines, and maybe our expectations of them, and then we'll end on that. Oh, and also we'll talk a little bit more about Michkov, because how could you possibly not talk about Michkov? And we'll just talk about him torts and the amount of pro games that he has played. Actually, Appleyard had a good tweet on that, so I'll reference Appleyard a little bit later. Okay, let's get into it. So the first piece of news that we have is Bobby Brink. He was re-signed or extended. In a sense, he's a restricted free agent, so he wasn't going to free agency. Assumingly he was never even an option. Really had a good first year. Put up double digits in goals, double digits in assists. Pretty good first year. Needs to work on his defensive play. Needs to work on obviously his forechecking, which Tortorella pointed out several times. But he did improve as the season went on. And he was kind of a surprise at camp. I think a lot of people really expected him more this year than they did last year. So by some degree, he is ahead of schedule. I know a lot of people kind of put down his rookie season in comparison to Tyson Forrester, but if Forrester wasn't around, we would be excited about Bobby Brink. There's always this like relativism, but he signed a 2-year deal at 1.5 million. Pretty much exactly what we told you was going to happen on this podcast. Again, after you see a lot of signings and you look at the positions the players in, RFA, the type of progress he's put up, the position the Flyers are against the cap, and the fact that he hasn't necessarily stapled himself as a core element to this lineup quite yet. Um, it was kind of expected. So, Vasili, what are your thoughts about Bobby Brink being extended?
I think it was pretty much expected. Obviously, him being an RFA accepts the qualifying offer, and then they make the contract
Yeah.
and kind of sign the contract with him and put the ball in his court. But like we were saying on the show a couple weeks back, we were expecting anywhere from like 1.25 million to around like 1.7, 1.8. Maybe even two. So that's kind of where it ends up landing in terms of the contract with the 1.5 million, which is fair, right? For a player who really just
It's
had his
perfect.
first, yeah, for a player who really just had his first year in the NHL, playing 57 games, with 23 points in those 57 games. It's not like he blew the coaching staff or really the fans, really anybody out of the water, but he did have some moments where he impressed and where he kind of showcased his skills. But
Yeah.
still, obviously, for him, a lot to work on, as you stated, with the defensive game mainly. Also, I would say the Flyers are probably looking for him to just get a little bit stronger in
And
general and
faster a
those,
little bit.
yeah, in those board battles, right? But yeah, skating has always been something that was mentioned with him as being like at a deficit. Not necessarily the fact that he isn't a fast player, but sometimes he might have to take different routes to get to pucks. So I'd imagine they want him to work on that, work on some of his strength, which definitely I think we will probably see improvements on next season. But yeah, for a 2-year deal for a guy like this who is still a really young player, only 23 years old, it's really just a bridge deal and kind of reconvene in 2 years and really see where his progression is at and if he fits into the future of the team, right? There's no telling what's going to happen. There could be always, other prospects, other selections that they've drafted that could surpass him on the depth chart. It's always a possibility. But on the other side of things, he could really break out in the next couple of seasons, especially maybe having the chance to play with Michkov on the power play if the power play there gets improved. And he does seem to be like a power play player, especially with a lot more space. And when you are a smaller player and you get more space like that on the power play, it can really be a benefit to make plays. So I'm interested to see really where Brink goes next season. Like he had 11 goals this season. I wouldn't be surprised to see him flirt with 20, especially if the
Yeah.
power play is improved. What were your thoughts, Yariv, on the
Yeah.
extension?
I mean, he only played 57 games. He put up 23 points, 11 goals, 12 assists. And, that is a 30-point pace across an entire season. That's actually pretty good for a 21 to 22-year-old rookie. Um, definitely projects to be a middle six forward in the NHL, if not potentially even above that if he continues to take jumps. That's kind of up to him, I would say, and his training regimen. He got essentially what Owen Tippett got when Tippett was around that age. So it you can see kind of a pattern here that the Flyers flirt with, and obviously it depends on your productivity as a player. Owen Tippett didn't come in here and like light the world on fire, right? So they gave him a $1.5 million extension. And then now he got his big deal. So, I think Bobby Brink, I don't think his ceiling is what Owen Tippett is, but he does have dynamic skill. He does have the ability to create plays. He's a very different type of player, but it's not surprising he got 1.5 million. I thought that was very appropriate and really good signing by Briere. I think that 1.5 million is the sweet spot for a player that you're not 100% sure of, but is good, and it's easy to bury. Again, if for some reason you had to waive him, which if you did, he's getting taken, let's be honest. But if for some reason you ever had to bury a contract like that at 1.5 million, you only have 400K against the cap. So it's a very safe,
Yeah. Or you could
movable
trade
pick.
him
Right.
too, right?
Exactly. Yes. The trade value is still there. He doesn't have an extended long deal. And let's be honest, a 22-year-old player who puts up a 30-point pace in his rookie year, that's a very tradable asset. I don't think the Flyers are rushing to move a guy like Bobby Brink at all. But we did talk about, potential packages. You don't know the future with Frost quite yet. We always kind of throw around the same names, unfortunately for them, but we're just spitballing. But a Frost Brink combination to get a superior player to some degree, there's like a basis for a trade. Both guys are cost effective. Both guys have upside. These are the things you play around with. And it's why it's important that he's at 1.5 million and you don't overpay players. You want to keep everybody understanding that where you are in your career, you're not getting this. And if you look at Matvei Michkov's signing, again, for those who like doubt Michkov, the Flyers are not doubting Michkov. Otherwise, they wouldn't have given him, that kind of monster rookie deal, which
Yeah, point
is
four
very
million,
rare.
0.25, or essentially, right?
Yeah,
Like with the bonuses. So it just shows how high regard
very
they hold him,
right.
obviously.
Yeah. And for those who think that Michkov is coming in here to put up a 30-point season, they're not expecting that. I think that 50, 60 point type of season is farly more likely for a player of Michkov's caliber than a guy like Bobby Brink or Morgan Frost or even Owen Tippett.
Yeah,
I think,
especially in a rookie year too.
yeah,
So
Tippett is the only guy where I'm like he has like, in my opinion, like two more levels above what
the
he's done
skating and
so
the
far.
shot, right, are
Right,
both elite, or
exactly.
could become elite if he can capitalize a little more on both those skills for sure.
Yeah. So the next signing the Flyers had, and this one, I went a little low on this one, but Vasili, if I recall correctly, you absolutely nailed. So Egor Zamula got an extension of 2 years. I thought it would be potentially a 1 year deal, but I definitely was like 1 or 2 years. I thought it was going to be at that 1.5 million. He did end up getting, I think it was 1.78, if I remember correctly.
1.7, yeah.
1.7 flat. Okay, so 1.7 over 2 years. This is very appropriate. It's a little high for what I would like. I'd like a more 1.5, but I would never, argue over 200K. Again, he is a defender. He did have a 30-point pace as well for the season. Pretty good year for a guy who, again, he had 21 points, but over in 66 games. So over a span of an entire season, you think maybe he can hit 30 there. He does have another gear in him. I don't know if he'll ever be above a really good number five. Could he ever be a top four? That's kind of up to him. I think he more is a number five guy, and a number five guy at 1.7 is like nobody's going to scoff at that. And again, this is a guy who did have a really good prospect career, has slowly worked himself up. He was an undrafted player. And a lot of time defensemen take a lot longer, and he's still, kind of at that ripe age of 23, 24. So could we see a jump from him? And then it's kind of a steal if he exceeds 30 points at 1.7, if he starts producing more offense and plays better defense, which I think is definitely there for him. Um, it's a steal. It's a great signing of 1.7 million. Just had a sudden power outage, so if you see a cut, that's why. So we'll just continue our show. Vasily, you were talking about Zamula.
Yeah, so Zamula obviously signs at 1.7 million here for the 2 years. I don't think it's a deal really that anybody should be outraged by or you wouldn't expect. I mean, obviously for a defenseman of his age, essentially his rookie season, as you know, in his prior years with the Flyers, he only really played 10 and 14 games in 2021, 22, and 2022, 23. So with 66 games in 2023, 24, it really is his rookie year. And for a rookie defenseman to put up, 21 points in 66 games is not something to really shake your head at. Obviously, it's a good production level for him. You don't know if he's ever going to get to that next level of really being that number four. I think that's what the Flyers kind of were hoping that he might become, or we're hoping that he could become, but he might end up just being that kind of bottom pair type defenseman for you. But even if he is a guy that has, offensive upside, and is a bottom pair guy, I think he could be of value. And then obviously the huge thing with him is the Russian factor. That must be, at least in my mind, a reason to them signing him back. You have Michkov coming over, so you want to make sure that you insulate him properly with other, fellow countrymen. So it really does make sense to me. And then another interesting thing, actually, that I saw about the Zamula contract. Let me just pull it up here. Sorry. Um, so yeah, he actually is getting 1 million of salary in his first year, a 500K signing bonus, and then year two he's getting 1.4 mil of salary and a 500K signing bonus. So they structured it a little bit interesting, and that kind of brings him to RFA in a couple of years, where his qualifying offer will then be raised up to 1.4 million in the way that they structured it. So I thought that was something interesting to note there for Zamula. But I do think just with his style of play and the way he plays, like he's looking for offense. Typically, he's not like a defensive defenseman by any means necessary. So with the way the Flyers are trying to play, they're trying to push the envelope up the ice. He does fit into their style. I mean, you'd want to see him be a little bit more assertive with some of his plays. Sometimes out there, you kind of could see him like almost thinking, okay, where do I go next? But I think that comes with experience. So it'll be interesting to see how he develops as they keep going. But I think especially if he can put some weight on, because he's a big guy, 6'3", 200 pounds last season. But at that frame, if he can get up to maybe 215, 220, the defensive shortcomings that you saw of him, like losing board battles, being easy to move off the puck, you might kind of see that disappear a bit, similar to Sanheim. I'm not saying it's going to be the exact same thing, obviously, but I think the defense can definitely improve, and him just, putting some weight on probably should be able to help him there.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And that's been the story of Zamula since he joined the organization as an undrafted player. He has increased his weight significantly, but there's still more to go. If he could hit 215, that would be amazing. But he is, as we know, in the training center already. He clearly knows that. He's also become really tight with Joel Farabee. He's like in with that young group of guys. And for all those people who want to move Joel Farabee and all that, I've seen this countless times again where Joel Farabee, I've said it, he has immense leadership abilities amongst men of his age. And I think that, again, that's a really good way of pulling Michkov into that group. I think all of that is important. I think it's important to keep this culture going that has seen itself succeed. A lot of this stuff is kind of diminished by people on the internet, and they want to just constantly reset and constantly trade players. And it's like, I don't really believe in any of that. I believe in, building a culture and how crucial that is, and seeing guys work hard together. And Joel Farabee is the guy who's added significant weight. Now Zamula needs to add more weight. Like you can see, they're here early. They're here all through the offseason. Jamie Baskow always brings that up. It's super important. It's a really good sign to seeing a potential jump in that player. The fact that he's not going home, he's not taking a vacation. He took a short vacation and he's back in the gym to bulk up. So I think he completely agrees with that. And hopefully we see that. Hopefully we see a stronger Zamula, because he could be better and a larger part of this team than anybody anticipates. Again, he went through the Tortorella shit. You know what I mean? He went through the grind of Tortorella's demands. And I think that's like Tortorella's secret sauce is he
Yeah.
pushes you and be like, yeah, 30 points not good enough. I want more weight. I want more speed. I want more strength. I want all of this stuff from you because that's how you can become the best player you can be. And maybe Zamula still has a chance to be a top four defender. We'll see. But the tools are there. It's just the execution hasn't been there yet.
Yeah,
And
can he put it together, right?
right.
And I think too the age range, like he's 24, usually that 24 to 27, especially for an undrafted player who's kind of
Yeah.
taken a little bit to blossom at every level. I think there definitely is potential for him to improve because you do see guys, especially defensemen, they might take a little bit longer to hit their stride, but usually it comes around, that 24, 25,
Yeah.
26 age range. And they have him locked up for 2 years to kind of see what happens and if he
Yeah.
can do that. So
And in a risk-free signing. So it's really good. Yeah, so let's talk about another I get Belarusian player, but Alexei Kolosov has been I guess mired in controversy so far. There are rumors started a couple months ago. Well, not a couple months, maybe a month ago about him not coming back. And then he was not at dev camp like initially anticipated. There were rumors that, he wasn't going to come back to the NHL. I didn't really buy that. Again, you've been working so hard to make this dream come true. You're going to now abandon it. Now, Briere did come out and say, that Kolosov kind of had a long season. He went from his season in the KHL, didn't really get any time off, came right over to the Phantoms, went through their playoffs as well. And he was saying how, they were just giving him more time. Jamie Baskow also, got pretty good source about potentially was a tourist visa issue where that visa expired. That absolutely could happen, and that he'd need to refile for a work visa. We don't really know. Did see some information about that, but Jamie actually shared an interesting picture with us and did share it online of Alexei Kolosov actually practicing in Belarus. That was sent to him, and he was wearing his Phantoms jersey, Flyers pads, and a Flyers helmet. So that doesn't necessarily, and that was like as of what I think 2 days ago. That doesn't
yeah.
necessarily scream I'm not going to be playing for the Flyers. So I think that should be at least an encouraging sign. I know we're like, looking for pictures again. It's like a Mitchkov situation
Internet
all over
sleuthing
again.
a little
But
bit,
that
but
ended up being right. So I would say I would say that Alexei Kolosov will be playing for the Phantoms this coming season. I cannot see a situation where all of a sudden this kid just abandons the NHL dream. He is a high-end goaltending prospect. Why would he just walk away? I can understand missing your family and all that and not getting an off season, right? Yeah, again, he's playing in the KHL. It's not like he's hanging around his family all year. He's traveling, he's working, then he travels again. Probably had no time with the people he loves and probably wanted extra time rather than to fly back to the United States for, a week or two and be here or whatever. Probably just wanted an extended vacation before he comes over here. So sounds logical to me.
yeah, I agree. I think it's all just really skepticism surrounding him, but there's really no concrete information pointing to the fact that, oh, okay, I
Right.
won't be returning. Like there were reports of that initially a few months ago from some Russian news sources, and I think Kevin Kurz of The Athletic immediately, well, not immediately, but tweeted out shortly after saying, from what I've heard and the sources that I'm aware of, there is no issue with Kolosov and he'll, be making his way to the Phantoms for next season. And we're kind of seeing the same thing that Jamie's corroborating here with the sources that, he's talked to, and even seeing Kolosov practicing in his Phantoms gear that doesn't lend to the idea that he's a goaltender that, for some reason doesn't want to come to the NHL or come to the Flyers. And at his age too, like, you have to realize that goaltenders typically aren't making it over until around, 24, 25. I think if I'm not mistaken, he's 23 years old. So, if that's the case, like it's about right on time for his development, right? To play a little bit with the Phantoms. And then from that point, eventually try to get to the Flyers. So yeah, he is 22 years old. So he will turn 23 this upcoming January. But there's still some development to do left for him as a goaltender, obviously at that age. But I do definitely think, as a guy that probably had the dream of making the NHL and you're so close and you're in an organization where the goaltending depth might not necessarily have that bona fide clear cut number one, I'm sure that he and his agent probably recognize, hey, like there's an opportunity for you here to rise potentially to the top of this, goaltending pool in the next couple of years. So I don't think he would want to, let that dream fall by the wayside and not really return to the Flyers or kind of burn bridges. So I would expect him to be here and make it over. And also, I mean, with the tourist visa, like who knows if the Flyers knew that was happening, that, hey, he only got a tourist visa. He's only going to be here for a couple weeks and he has to go back, apply for the work visa. So it might be something behind the scenes that they're aware of, but they're obviously not going to make that type of stuff public. So
Yeah.
I just think it's people being skeptical for the sake of being skeptical.
Well,
And the Cutter Gauthier news
the
probably doesn't
Gautier,
help.
the
But
Fedotov, people are just
yeah.
very nervous and tend to assume the worst right now. And I think it is fueled by social media and some media that kind of make it worse. But, I think for the most part, I think we're safe with
Yeah.
Kolosov. And again, I said this to Jamie while I was talking to him on the phone too. Like, let's say he does not come this year, but, Flyers still own his rights. He still wants to be an NHL goaltender. Is it that big of a deal if he ends up coming over next year instead of this year or in 2 years or whatever? It's like, I don't know. It's just like, I don't see a world where the Flyers really lose. Ideally, we want him on the Phantoms. We want him
Yeah.
to play in the AHL, but he's a damn good goalie in the KHL as a starter. So it's like, it's not the end of the world regardless, right?
Yeah, that's a great point. I
Yeah,
feel like the KHL could be even a better league potentially. So,
right.
I mean,
Exactly.
obviously it sucks because you want him under your own control in the
Yeah.
AHL. You want to develop him with your own development staff, but like you said, it's really not like the end of the world type of scenario anyway. So,
He's been played against men for years, which is why we're so excited about him because he was so successful against men. Um, Same reason with Fedotov, right? Like Fedotov also developed in that league. We were ready to have him at 25, we ended up getting him at 27. Okay, we'll see how it turns out. All right, let's go into training camp impression. So we weren't at training camp. I did manage to go to the scrimmage, which was over July 4th weekend. Vasili, I know you watched the broadcast of the game. I tried to rewatch it through the broadcast. I watched a little bit of it. I didn't rewatch things. I kind of wish I did for this conversation, but I was there on site with, I was standing with Jim Jackson and Charlie O'Connor and at some point Jason Martinez, and it actually was kind of an empty house a little bit. Russ Cohen was sitting in the room. Some people didn't even want to come out. They were just like, there's like a media area. You can either go outside on a balcony or you have like the windows you can watch. But I was on the balcony. So we'll go through it. We're not going to talk about camp invites. We will talk about Jack Williams a little bit. But we'll start off with Team Briere and we'll just talk about the players that are relevant and just initial thoughts on them. And I guess we'll start off with Owen McClellan. I'm just gonna go from left to right, and top down. So Owen McClellan, I will say he looks really good in tight corners, looks like a good playmaker. I do see the appeal of him. And just a general thought here, not about just him, but about a lot of the NCAA guys. I wonder when like the call is to like make a move to bring these guys over. I don't know how much more you need to see from Owen McClellan. Maybe they're not 100% sure they want him on the Phantoms, but the kid looked pretty good. I mean, he's able to create plays. He does have somewhat of an offensive upside. I don't know if he'll ever be more than like an AHL top six forward. But there is some skill there, and I did like what I saw from him. He definitely has the ability to make plays. And that was the thing that stuck out to me. He's still a little bit slight. He could use some more weight on him a little bit. But overall, I really liked his hands. I didn't think he stuck out like too much. Again, Team Briere was the orange team, and they kind of got their butts kicked. So he's one of the only players really driving any offense. And I'll say this before I pass it over to you, Vasili. One thing that I did notice from this roster that they built, they kind of put Bjarnason on Team Briere with a weaker offense. I don't know if they did that because Massimo Rizzo didn't play in that game. They kind of went like Bonk and Bjarnason on one team and more of a
versus the world. Yeah.
versus like a defense, like it was like a more defensive I guess, focused lineup versus a more offensive focused lineup where they had the two camp invite goaltenders. I don't know if that was on purpose, but there was definitely a large disparity in offensive skill between Team Orange and Team White. So I will say that. So Owen McLaughlin,
Yeah, McLaughlin. I mean, I thought for
McLaughlin, whatever.
McLaughlin, it's all the same. It's all relative. It's okay.
McLaughlin.
Uh, I just would say in general, like for McLaughlin, like there's a couple moments where he stood out, just in the corners, like retrieving pucks and trying to make some plays out front and things like that. To be quite fair, I mean, not really a lot of players on Team Briere really stood out to me. Like Cole Knuble. I mean, there were a couple times where I noticed him and thought, okay, like near the around the net, some of his speed, like he looks significantly quicker. Knuble did,
Yeah,
versus like the last development camp and even in like during training camp and stuff when we saw him in prior seasons. Uh, but really, I think the guy for me for that offense in general is probably Gendron. I thought Gendron, stood out a little bit more,
sure.
especially the 3-on-3. The 4-on-4 when there was more ice, and things like that. But just overall, like there wasn't anything, crazy in terms of the Team Briere. And I guess it does make sense. Like they really only get 3 goals to what the Joneses.
Yeah, one of them was like a given empty netter.
Yeah, exactly. So
Yeah.
there's really not much going on for that team in general. Like, so that's
Well,
why I kind of wanted to just generalize. Devin Kaplan was a guy I wanted to mention too, because
yeah, I was
he
just yeah.
seems to be like an old, like he's not an older player because they just drafted him a couple of seasons ago now, in the Cutter Gauthier draft. But like, you would want to see more from him, and like you didn't really
Yeah.
see a lot, right? And
He didn't look as strong as I thought he would. Like physically.
especially being a little bit older than some of
Yeah.
the other players around. So I just think there's a couple of guys that you're looking at that you would have wanted to
Well,
stand out a bit more. And I didn't really see too much. Like Oliver Bonk, for example, like I thought
well,
he had a
hold on.
solid game.
Hold on before we move on to the D. Sorry, I don't mean to cut you off, but let's do this is a better idea. We'll do forwards and then we'll talk about the D of each so we can do like more general speaking. I do want to talk about Bonk, so I'm sorry to cut you off. I do want to mention Jack Berglund real quick before we get to the D. I will say he looked slow. He didn't look like he was like the skating. I understand what people are saying needs work. But I did notice some really nice soft hands on him, like really good poise with the puck, and the ability to move through traffic and to make plays happen, exiting his own zone quite a bit. I do wonder, like, and this is like a general statement about that whole draft class in a lot of ways. It does seem to be a sneakier upside draft than a lot of people anticipate. Like, again, there are some risky picks here. I think Jack Berglund's one, but if he does work out and he does get that skating improved, like I do kind of see why they took him in the second round. At least the hands looks really, really sharp to me. I don't know if you
He
noticed
looks
that,
like a
Vasily.
smart player. Yeah,
Yeah,
no, I definitely noticed him a little bit. He looks like a smart player. I think the thing for him is he's making like all the plays you'd want to see him make, like the simple plays. He was using his size around the net when he got there. It's just he didn't really have much around him to help him, in my opinion.
right.
In terms of okay, when it was time to capitalize or follow up on a chance, there wasn't really a lot of chemistry. And obviously it's a development camp, so it's hard. They're putting these teams together. Not on a whim, but like these guys haven't played together very long or anything like that. So sometimes it can be hard to just have that chemistry off a dime.
Sure.
But I liked what I saw from Berglund, but nothing that jumped off the page. Like for me, I think the most noticeable guys of the forwards were probably Cole Knuble and Gendron.
Sure. Yeah. And Ryan McPherson barely noticed him. I will say that. Yeah, didn't notice too much. So yeah, you were talking about Bonk. Let's move on to the D.
Yeah, sure.
And go ahead, right into it.
I thought Bonk against, a superior team and Team Jones, he had a lot more defending to do,
Right.
obviously.
I
And
think that
that's
was
what they
on purpose.
wanted.
Yeah.
Exactly. I think that's what they wanted to see from him. Like, let's put him in a situation where kind of, the offense is stacked against him. It's kind of the opposite of what he has to deal with in London, where he's on the stacked team.
Right.
Right. So I think
Exactly.
they want to maybe look at the adversity in a sense, okay, if we stack, an offense against this kid, how does he react? How does he play against them? And it was a solid game for him. Like there was gaps in terms of like players coming in off the blue line, and he was defending them well with his gaps and his stick control and his stick kind of checks and things like that. You didn't really see much from him offensively, but I think that kind of lends to, the team he's playing with in a sense. Like you can make a first pass out of your zone, but it's up to the forwards now, to kind of capitalize on that breakout and try to turn into a chance. There wasn't anything that I would say that stuck out to me that was a negative for Bonk. So it was a solid performance, but he didn't like jump off the page or anything.
Sure.
He was just steady, right? But ultimately, from a defenseman, that's what you want. You want to see a guy be steady, not have glaring mistakes. Carson Bjarnason, just to jump over, like he had some big saves. There were a couple times where he got hung out to dry. It's hard to judge a goalie like in a 6-1, like 6-2 game that it kind of was by the end of it. But he made some good saves. I think one area, at least for me, like as a goalie that I might want to see him kind of improve on is down low. He seems to be like pretty solid, but it looks like sometimes like, mid to high blocker, there can be, a little bit that he might need to kind of improve on. So I'm sure that's something that they probably called out to him as well. But we'll obviously see how the development goes.
I think you're absolutely right when you talk about Bjarnason and how tough it is to really, I guess, like you're not gonna. There's no point in tearing apart his game in that type of situation. I think he probably had a couple where he didn't save. He could have saved them maybe. But for the most part, there were like breakdowns defensively in front of him. He did have some really nice saves as well where he removed goals. We know that he's been shaky at times and he's been up and down. The big thing on him is that he got a lot big physically, and he talked about that. How, the Flyers training staff told him that if he's bigger, he'll make more saves just on the sheer fact that he'll be bigger. So he's added significant muscle, and I think that's really great. I'm not going to judge him too much. He's going to be a long-term project. I imagine he's going to do a full stint in the OHL before he even comes over and plays for the Phantoms, especially with Kolosov. And maybe he'll be here over with Zavragin at a similar time. I do agree with what you said about Bonk. Steady defensively, clearly looked like clear cut the best defender on that team. Wasn't really a question. Like I didn't see much from Matteo Mann either. He is massive. He didn't look awful. He actually is pretty decent skater for a guy his size. But Oliver Bonk, it just felt like all the burden was kind of on him defensively, but he stood up to it. I thought in his zone, he did really well. Some of the breakout passes could have used some work, but again, that team didn't do very well offensively. And, I don't know if, again, the thought was to have Massimo Rizzo on there because they were kind of missing that top centerman, I guess, to some degree. Cole Knuble is more of a defensive guy. And Berglund is like, it's his first year. So I think maybe if they had Massimo Rizzo would have balanced things out a little bit, but, they kept him out for recovery reasons, from his injury. But I thought it was interesting to watch that scenario. All right, let's go over to Team Jones, the white team. There's a lot more to say about the offensive part of this game, right? Just to just come out and say it, Alex Bump looks once again really, really good. And that was echoed by Brent Flares. I did sit on the press conferences as well afterwards, and this is available online, and I believe Charlie O'Connor tweeted it out immediately, but Brent Flair pretty much said, looks like an NHL player to me. And I completely see that. And that's where the question of the NCAA thing, where I'm like, this guy is clearly good enough to be playing in the AHL right now. I assume they're going to give him another year in the NCAA, but I'd want to get this kid locked up because he does look to be at least a third line NHL player. And, in a lot of ways, he kind of brings a lot of the stuff Joel Farabee does. I don't know if he's going to be as good as Joel Farabee. Probably not. I don't see just at the rate that he's developed and how good he's been. I don't know if he's going to be more than a 40-point player in the league, but a 40-point player drafted, I believe he was in the 5th round. That's a phenomenal fifth round pick. And I really liked what I saw from Bump. Let's save Jett Luchanko. Noah Powell looked really good at times. Definitely noticed the skating problem. He's got a really weird way of skating. He's got kind of this wide-legged stride. He wasn't that balanced on his feet. Needs to work on that, but clearly has really nice hands and an offensive drive. Flair also mentioned him. Just always somehow finding the puck. He kind of reminds me of like a poor man's John Tavares in a lot of ways, where like he's just kind of always in the right place. Always got, he's got good hands trying to score. I'm not saying he is John Tavares, but the things that Tavares does on an elite level, it does seem like Powell has some of that in his game. Um, Jack Williams did stick out. I don't think enough to get signed, but he was interesting as an invite player. Just seems solid all around. I don't know if what that really amounts to, but I liked it. Um, yeah, and I'll open up to you. We can talk about half this lineup. What are your thoughts? Obviously, there's still
Yeah,
Barkey, Rohoinen,
for
Avon.
sure. I think Bump looked really good. Like he looked confident with the puck in general. Like he didn't seem like he was afraid to handle the puck, which not to say other players were, but I think at times a lot of other
He was
players were quick.
poised.
Yeah, very poised. I think at times other players were quick to like make a pass, look for a teammate, but
Yeah.
he kind of looked a little more settled in, a little more confident with the puck. He was kind of surveying, kind of waiting, seeing if things would open up for him, which makes sense. Like he's been at these development camps before, where for some players it's their first time, so you can understand that it could be nerve wracking for some guys, even though it's just a scrimmage. They're trying to impress the brass that's watching them, so it makes sense. And I think for Flair to say that Bump, is pretty close to an NHL player, or he is an NHL player essentially in his eyes, that's pretty telling to where the organization holds him, obviously in a high regard. It's going to be interesting to see what happens with him because, like, with Western Michigan last season in college, he had 36 points in 38 games. So maybe they want to send him back and really see him crush that and, like, get, a lot more points in games played and things like that, and really crush that, like, points per game metric and then offer him a contract. But yeah, I'm really not sure. And you would expect to, like, we see Jett Luchanko get his ELC. You kind of wonder, like, okay, is Bump like going to be on his way over soon as well? Is he going to, make it the AHL, be an NHL option, especially with Flair
Prob-
mentioning that, but who knows?
Probably the end of the NCAA season, they'll sign
Yeah,
him and
maybe.
bring him over.
It's
They
just strange
obviously
to
really like
me.
him.
It's just strange to have the assistant GM say, well, he's basically an NHL player and then send him back to, the NCHC to play with
Yeah.
Western Michigan. I just thought it's something weird. It's almost like they're trying to, like, not show their hand, but like they are kind of showing their hand and they're kind of just leaving it out
Well,
there to
hopefully he
the
wants
people's
this.
interpretation.
Hopefully he
So,
wants to sign. I would imagine he does. I mean, we've invested in him,
yeah,
but maybe he's getting impatient. He didn't dominate college hockey though. He had a good season, but
that's what I mean. Yeah.
yeah. Um, that's an interesting one.
Um,
Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, we'll leave Luchenko as kind of his own topic. We can both just go back and forth
Yeah,
on him. But some other guys, like I thought Heikki Ruhonen,
yeah,
he looked pretty interesting to me. Like
yeah.
there were some rushes where he kind of separated himself and really showed his hands. Like I saw the one goal he scored, he got a pass from JR Avon, then Deke Bjarnason out and scored. Like he looked like he had good hands in close, and he just seemed like a guy that was also smart on the ice too, like good hockey sense, which is not surprising from like a Finnish player. Usually that's a pretty common trait for some of those guys. Obviously Hunter McDonald too. I mean, he's more on the defense side, but he stood out to me as well. He had a goal.
I
There
mean,
was like a
he. If we're gonna talk about McDonald, I mean, he looked far superior to everybody in
pretty
in
much,
this
yeah,
game.
physically superior
He
too,
couldn't
right?
even he
Like,
couldn't even play his game
yeah.
if you really think about it.
He couldn't hit really, and he kind of said that in the press conference. Like we're all teammates. There's only so much you can really get away with.
Right.
But yeah, he had a really good play in the 4-on-4. Like he broke up an entry, like won a puck race, and then he set a teammate up, and they had a really nice scoring chance. Obviously, didn't score, but he showed more of, I think, his offensive ability than people were kind of. Saying that he wasn't really showing too much during the like scrimmage, like not the scrimmages, during the like drills and
Sure.
earlier in the week, which makes sense. Like there's only so much you can really show in drills, especially as a defenseman. So you kind of got to see them in game action. But I'd imagine McDonald, just the way the team and the brass have been hyping him up, like he's probably going to be a guy who is close to making the NHL roster, and if not, will be like a first call up situation. Um, some other guys, Alex Ciernek, like I thought he had some good moments with the puck in terms of puck handling. Like
Shifty. He's a shifty dude.
Yeah, exactly. I agree. Like he's a guy that when he has the puck on his stick, he seems like he's kind of has patience with it. Like he's waiting around, he's
Yeah.
surveying to kind of see what's going
Kind of
on, what's
like
happening.
kind of like a younger, they don't play the same, but like a little bit of bump. Bumps came in and like had immediate offensive like poise and a shot, and I felt that with Ciernik.
Yeah, and he plays amongst men
Sure.
overseas, so
Yeah.
it makes sense why there might be some of that there, right? When you're playing, at
Kind of
higher
small
levels.
a little bit. I don't know
Yeah,
if you noticed that.
yeah, a little bit. When you're playing at higher levels of some of your competition, like at this camp, it makes sense that he might be a little bit more poised. I especially noticed him in the 3-on-3. Like I think that's when his speed really kind of came
Yeah.
to the forefront, and it makes sense. There's more open ice there. And then Noah Powell too, I thought was really noticeable. At certain points, just because there was some sloppiness, like when he was like trying to exit and things like that, so you would notice him for that reason. But that was already expected, right? We kind of knew the skating deficiencies, and that's something the Flyers have
Sure.
kind of said, "Hey, we'll work on with him." But really, what I saw is like he really does have that power forward mold where like when he had the puck, he was really trying to bring it towards the net. He was trying to make some like nifty plays when he did have the puck. He almost had a highlight reel goal and was trying to dangle through a bunch of
Right.
players, but didn't
It-
make it through. But just the fact that you're going to try that in development camp, and you know too that you're probably not like at the top of your game in terms of your skating stride, just shows that like the confidence is there, and he's a guy that wants to score goals, obviously.
yeah, he's a high risk, high reward type of player. Like he could end up doing nothing but being an AHL player, or he could end up putting it all together. It's a humongous increase in productivity from his first year to the second year. And I believe leading the USHL in goals. Um, so Ruhonen, you mentioned him. I also very intriguing, really thick on his feet. Like it seems
Yeah.
like he has really good balance, not like lightning speed or anything. Seems to be good at everything kind of player. I'm
He's
interested
smart,
to
very
see.
smart player.
Yeah,
I can
I'm really
tell.
interested to see how he develops. I don't really know what to expect from him. If he like ideally, it looks like he would be like a perfect third line center. Like he's not small, he's strong on his feet, he has offensive ability, he can shoot, he can pass. And he's being a Finnish player, I always go like those guys. A lot of times, just their play style, being a bottom six forward, like a lot of times can be ideal. And maybe he would be like a third line center of the future. I did think highly of him. J.R. Avon, I thought he looked real fast. He had some shifty moments, didn't necessarily stick out offensively too much. Again, the team was dominating, but he was part of that domination. Like he did play well in the role that he was in, playing the right side too, which I thought was interesting. And then let's talk about Denver Barkey. Really quiet first period. And then the second and the third period, I thought he was kind of everywhere. Started showing off his skill, and then the domination kind of took over for Team White. I thought once Barkey and Avon were going, and Williams, and they kind of just kept attacking with each line. I thought Barkey looked really good.
Barkey
Still,
looked like the best passer on the
yeah,
ice to me. Like
yeah,
his vision was there, and him and Williams specifically were linking up for a lot of
sure,
plays and passing between each other. So it'll be interesting to see what happens with Williams because he scores a goal and he looked pretty good. But you got to factor in with Williams as well. Like I do believe he's a little bit older, correct? Like he's 22 years old. So
yeah.
you have to look at that and say, hey, like there's some guys
That's
he's at
why,
this camp that
yeah,
are 19, or
that's why
even
I'm
a
not
little.
convinced he's getting.
Yeah, that was my assumption too. Like he did have a pretty decent season at Northeastern. He had, let's see here, 36 points in 34 games, so over a point a game. But I just think, you would expect a guy who's 22, probably a little more physically mature than his opposition to kind of impress at a camp like this. So that's why I think, it might be, hey, down the line, maybe if they see him have another really good season in college, maybe something they think about. But I,
Yeah.
I don't think right now he earned himself anything.
Yeah, like maybe an AHL deal, similar to what Bolton got, but we'll see. I only got a short look at him. So did you, right? Just really at the scrimmage. Santeri Sulku, some good hands I saw. Um, didn't stick out too much. I think he's a long-term development project anyway, as it is. Sawyer Bolton, I didn't really notice. I noticed him physically at times. I know he's going to be joining the Phantoms. I'm still a little confused by the signing. We'll talk a little bit about it when we talk about the Phantoms. Spencer Gill didn't notice too much, but he played well with Hunter McDonald. So
Yeah.
he looks too thin. to be a
There's a
guy his
couple of
size.
entries. There's a couple of entries I noticed where he was like carrying the puck up and stuff. That's something that the team kind of noted that was a part of his strengths, like being able to carry up the puck in transition with his size is something they were really interested in. So that makes a lot of sense. Like
I
same
thought.
thing
Oh,
for
I'm
me
sorry. Go
with
ahead. No,
I
no.
was gonna
Go
say,
ahead.
yeah, same thing for me with Solku. Like there's a couple silky plays where you really notice his
Yeah,
hands, but
yeah.
other
I
than
saw
that,
that.
not much. The other guy on D I wanted to mention was Ethan Sampson.
Same. Yeah.
He didn't do like a ton or anything. He didn't really jump off the page, but he just seemed steady. Like he didn't
Yeah.
make a lot of mistakes. Nice first pass. He was physical when he needed to be, especially for his size. That's six
Again, they
three.
they kind of dominated, so it's kind of
Yeah,
hard to say he didn't play
that's what I
well.
mean. That's what I mean, right? That's the thing. So I kind of wish they, you know, made the teams a little more evenly matched just to
Yes.
see more competitive scrimmage. But there's obviously a reason why they did this. Would you say that maybe some of the prospects on the other team they might not, hold as highly as the prospects on this team? I don't know if that's the case. But maybe they're trying to test certain guys. Maybe they're trying to see, okay, how do these guys on Teams Jones play together with more skilled players around them? I
Sure.
don't really know the thinking, but there must be some sort of method to the
Well, they
madness, I'd
they
imagine.
clearly didn't put Barkey and Bonk on the same team on purpose, right?
Yeah,
Like
exactly.
that was clearly on purpose, right? They've been playing together for past couple years. Why not put them together? Well, you want them to be uncomfortable, and I think they did. To your point, man, I think they really did go for that. I thought it was interesting. I actually thought the camp invite goalies played really well. And they're both 20 years old.
Yeah,
They're
Mateo Drobak, he had some big saves, especially in
yeah,
3-on-3, 4-on-4.
yeah.
So
They they
maybe
they played well and they're young. I don't know what that turns into, but I do.
20-year-old goalies, there's a lot of development time to
I'll
go.
tell you,
So
I saw Nolan Meyer, who was doing a really good job as the number three in the AHL a couple years ago, and was rotated into some AHL games. Who was not bad. Actually signed an AHL deal, I think with Providence.
yeah,
I'm not.
Providence, you're
Yeah, I
right.
think it was Providence. So maybe they need somebody in the ECHL. I mean, these guys are of age, so I don't know how they looked in the rest of camp, but again, they were on the better team. But they did make some nice saves when needed.
Do
Some
you want to get into Luchanko, Yariv?
yeah. Let's get into the most interesting player, which was like, how did Jett Luchanko look? Um, Look, to me, I'm looking at the little details in his game. When I look at Luchanko, I will say I get more excited about this kid every day. I still love Zeev Boyum. I still would have loved to have him on this team, but I am not looking at this pick as, oh, this guy tops out as a second line center. If he does, I still see it as a win. Again, that's like drafting a top four defenseman, right? It's like equal to that. So no matter what, I think it's gonna be a good pick. But the kid won the skating, by far the best skater out there. Like not even close, in my
He
opinion.
is the best skater out there from what I
By
saw, to be honest.
clear cut. The smarts on the ice, absolutely there. Some very nice passing. The stick handling I thought was good when he needed. He did get out muscled at times. Again, he's the youngest guy at camp. Him and Spencer Gill are both 17. So it's funny they have Luchenko here listed as 18 years old. He doesn't turn 18 till August. And I thought the stick handling, the poise was absolutely there. Defensively, I thought he arguably was the best forward on defense, which all of that came as advertised. I still believe he needs to work on his shot. I didn't see him shoot like much at all, which was kind of disappointing. And in the 3-on-3, he didn't have the puck passed to him, which I thought was also disappointing. Didn't really understand that. He should have been the breakout guy on that. But, again, they're just everybody's trying to make a name for themselves in a 3-on-3 tournament. But at 3-on-3, I could see him being absolutely lethal. Still want to see him work on his shot, work on his stick handling. I do see it, and I'll give a shout out to you, Vasili, because you were sent me this last night when we were talking. Like the Nico Heischer comparison that you said you saw flying around, that you kind of see. The more think about it, the more I see that. I don't know if he will hit Nico Heischer's level, but that's what I agree with you. I think that's what he projects to be. And if you look at Heischer, yeah, he does have 180-point season, but primarily, he's been that 60 to 70-point player playing against best players in the other team, captain material. Um, two-way forward, Selkie voting guy, if he ends up being a Nico Hischier, like I wouldn't be shocked, and that would be a very, very good pick for the Flyers and somebody that you can build a team around, even if he's not a legit, 100-point player in the league. He can still play against best players in the world. And I saw signs of that. I saw the maybe the best stick amongst forwards too. And just his ability to read the play around him, like looking all around, intercepting passes, all that was there. So I think just like a young guy who is younger than everybody around him, just to continue to develop that offensive game. And he's a guy I think could make the NHL earlier than anticipated. If it wasn't for his age group, like, I don't know, but I don't think it's going to take 3 years for him to make the NHL from what I can see.
Yeah, I mean, you did a great job breaking it down, so there's not too much for me to really add in terms of Luchanko. But I think obviously the main thing is the skating. Everybody notices that with him. He just looked like the fastest player on the ice to me, particularly. And it's really his motor too. It's not just the skating, but like it looked like he was getting to different areas of the ice very quickly after just like okay, entering the zone with speed. Okay, the puck turns around. He's already back in his defensive zone, like at
Yep.
the drop of a hat. So just his ability to get to different areas and to get to, certain, places on the ice, like neutral zone, defensive zone, offensive zone very quickly. That's obviously an enticing part to his game. His puck pressure too, right? Like he's using his speed to pressure other players on the opposing team with the forecheck in the neutral zone. That's like the little details of his game. He looked good defensively too. Like he was coming back and helping his defenseman out like a center should with retrievals and breakouts and things like that. There was a couple turnovers that he forced in the neutral zone and just with his speed in general and putting pressure on guys. He's making some good passes to his line mates like a Bump and a Powell. I think it's also notable that Bump, Luchanko and Powell were the best line on the ice as well, and all
Yeah.
three of them were noticeable for us. So I think that's something you have to know. Like they were kind of treating them like a first line, and that's probably for a reason, as
Yeah, they look that
they,
way.
they see the upside with those guys. So they want to kind of put them into those situations. And then one thing too is like he might have deflected a goal in. I think it was a Cooper Wiley shot. It's hard to tell in the scrimmage. There's not really a replay
Sure.
or anything like that, but it looked like he had a tip. Obviously, they're not going to go back and like check that out, like and credit him versus the guy that shot it from the points. Like, who knows? But like, he might have scored one. But I think for first development camp, kind of fresh into the Flyers organization, it's about as much as you could ask from a first round pick. Like, he impressed a lot during the drills, like with certain like skating drills and 2-on-1 drills and things like that. And I think even in odd man rushes during the scrimmage, like he was a guy that with his speed can really, hurt other teams in the transition game and with odd man rushes. So it's a positive overall, his camp, his development camp. And I think the telling sign is the Flyers don't let him leave, Philadelphia, leave Voorhees training center without an entry level contract. So I think that just shows how high they are on the kid. Like you could have waited. He's only 17 years old, but they wanted to sign him right now, get the deal done, and then obviously the contract will slide until he makes his NHL debut, AHL
Yeah,
debut.
I think youngest Flyer to ever sign a contract. If
Interesting. That's
I
awesome.
would assume so. I can't recall the last time a kid was 17 years old inside an NHL deal, at least with the Flyers. Look, I see the upside. I know
So do I.
people like if I'm so fascinated to watch him develop as the season goes on, because I have a feeling we might be looking back at this pick and being like, damn, like that was a hell of a pick, actually. And maybe the scouts know more than the internet people. Just saying. It's open your mind to
I
that. That
also just think too, like the fact that he's a full year younger than a lot of his other counterparts, it's a huge deal, especially in terms of
yeah.
development. Like his 18, your 18-year-old season usually is like a very big deal in terms of where you might project or what you might become in terms of being a player. And that's still coming up for him, right? So like he had an over point a game season at 17. What can he do and what can he build on with another year of getting stronger?
Yeah.
Like, yeah, at 17 years old, you're not done growing physically. Like you're still maturing. So
And he
there's a lot
looks
for him to grow, right? Like,
Yeah, and he doesn't even it's like the opposite of Barkey, where Barkey looks like a 14-year-old still. Luchanko looks like he could be 19 when you look at him.
Yeah, I
Like
agreed. Yeah.
I wouldn't be shocked if he grows another inch, like he comes in above 6 foot. He's already 187 pounds. Like he could come in 6 foot, 200 pounds when he's ready for the NHL and just be like a stump that is incredibly fast and has offensive gifts. So I'm really curious to see how he develops because, we haven't had a player like this in the org since Mike Richards. And he's not the same player as Mike Richards. But again, Mike Richards was that elite two-way player that wasn't like big like Couturier, was a playmaker. It seems like that's what Luchanko is, at least somewhat modeling his game to be. I don't know if the Nick Suzuki thing is going to play out or the Heischer thing is going to play out, but he's in that mold. So,
I think the
and
common
those
theme,
guys are damn
Yariv,
good.
yeah, the common theme with all three of those guys is the hockey IQ, right? They're all really smart players, all defensively oriented, but also have that offensive instinct too. So I think that's what the Flyers want to see, him raise that offensive instinct to the next level, the next gear, maybe use the shot a little bit more. And that's really
Yeah.
when you see him round out as a whole, right?
Yeah, absolutely. All right, let's move on to the next topic. And wanted to talk about this rebuild process. I've been hearing a lot of stuff. Again, I keep names out of it because I'm not trying to call people out specifically, but I hear people trying to rewrite history and trying to make statements about this plan and how they're running at a time and how none of it makes sense and how come they haven't traded Lawton and how come they're keeping Konechny. First of all, I want to make the statement that we're going into 2025 draft is the fourth year of the rebuild. I want to make that clear to people. People can debate that because it happened under Fletcher, but drafting fifth overall, trading Claude Giroux for an extra draft pick, getting younger with Owen Tippett, they already started it, right? Briere continued it in his image, but it did start under Chuck Fletcher, which means he was given that mandate prior to that. There's a reason that it stopped at Rasmus Ristolainen trade, which was a disastrous trade for the Flyers, at least from a asset standpoint and a cap management standpoint. Wasn't a smart move, and that kind of ended. So that was year one, drafting at 5. Then drafting at 7, getting Michkov, a franchise caliber prospect, one that we have not seen anything like this since Peter Forsberg or Eric Lindros, which we did not draft even. We had to trade for that guy. This year we drafted at 13. We had a top 12 pick. We drafted Luchanko. Next year we have 6 picks inside the top 64, which has not happened since like the beginning of this franchise. No one has seen this. I saw an article by Philly Hockey Now that why it's deceptive and not that great that the Flyers. Are you kidding me? Like, are you kidding me? You have 3 first-round picks. I was just rewatching Draft Day. I was messaging you yesterday. If you guys haven't seen it, it's a football movie made by Disney about being a general manager on Draft Day. It's a pretty good movie. I really like it. And in that movie, he trades 3 first-round picks consecutive to get the first overall pick, and it's kind of this whole thing. If you have 3 first-round picks, and again, the Flyers, from what we understand, didn't want to pull the trigger on what Columbus wanted, which was 2 first-round picks and a second, I think, something like that for that top pick. If you have 3 first-round picks, you can get inside the top 3. Like you can.
You can make a move, yeah.
It's a huge cost, to get into that. But 3 first-round picks is no joke. And we don't know where these teams are going to finish. Like, we make assumptions. They're both really good teams that have that. But I look at this path and going into this 4th year as Briere leaning into the rebuild this year. He didn't add any significant assets. They could take a step forward. They could take a step back because the division is going to be a lot tougher this year than it was last year. New Jersey looks poised to have a really good season. We know that the Penguins will still be going for it. We know that Washington improved. So maybe the Flyers in their mind are like, well, we'll let it play out as it goes. And for those people like crying over Lawton still being here, one, I still believe he's very important to this team. But there is absolutely opportunity to move him moving forward. It's not like his value has been completely diminished. The Travis Konechny signing, the way people panic over that, they want to get rid of him now and then sign a guy of equal caliber in free agency in like a year from now. It doesn't make any sense to me. You either keep him and you don't sign that guy in free agency next year, or just keep him and you try to see what you have in the team. And I just think people are panicking a little bit much. And Vasily, maybe you disagree on some of what I said, but I just think people are really panicking, and I think you should be excited about what the Flyers are doing. They clearly have scouted this upcoming draft heavily. They have poised themselves to have a huge 2024 offseason. Again, Johansson will be gone. Peterson will be gone. Half of that buyout money is going to be off the cap. Significant amount of cap opening up. Doesn't mean they're going to be bringing in like a high priced veteran, but you see, it's this offseason will set up the following offseason where all that comes off again, and you have a better idea of what your team is with a huge cap and the cap going up. There's a lot of potential here coming. I am not in tank territory. That destroys your culture. It does not work out like people say it does. They point out to a couple teams. I don't know if you saw that, and I'll let you talk in a second here. I know I'm going off on a rant. I saw this chart going around of the cup winning teams and the amount of star players, but what that chart doesn't show you is how those star players ended up on those teams. A lot of those star players were not top 5 picks. I'm sorry. Some of them were, and a lot of them weren't. So, and they weren't there drafted either. A lot of them were brought onto that team later, as we saw with Florida Panthers this year and Matthew Tkachuk. It's like there's just so many different ways to go about this. The idea is to accrue assets, to find your core, and then to make those big moves when that window opens. And it seems like that's what the Flyers are doing.
Yeah, I think you really nailed it, Yariv. Obviously with the in-depth analysis there. I think fans have every right to be critical of Danny Briere. If they want to be. I think the easiest thing to look at is what he stated in multiple different press conferences, the pre-draft press conference, the night one, after night one draft press conference, the after day 2 draft press conference. He essentially stated that they're in a rebuild and they won't be making, really huge trades or a lot of huge moves in free agency unless they think that it lines up with their overall trajectory and their overall plan and their overall ideology. And to your point, if you look at, the draft picks that they have earmarked for 2025, 6 and, picks in round 1 and 2, overall there, obviously their strategy is building through the draft right now, at least as, moving forward for the next couple of years here. I think the main thing, and we've said it on the show before, is just looking at the money and how much money they're going to have upcoming in the next few seasons. Like if you look at, the 2025 season, for example, and look at the team's cap space, like the Flyers projected in 2025-26 offseason will have 25.85 million. Obviously, that doesn't include a Travis Konechny extension yet or other players that need to be re-signed, but you could, safely say they might have between like 10 to 14 million.
It also doesn't count the cap going up.
Yeah, exactly. Right. So let's just say, around like 14, 15 million, maybe after you re-sign Konechny or something like that. Like that's like a significant amount of money for you to either bring a player in through trade.
I think it'd be closer to 20 million after Konechny. I'm sorry to cut you off, but
it'll
go up 5 million and his salary goes up, let's say at most 5 million. I don't think it's going to go that high, but
yeah, something like that. So I mean, like nonetheless, like they're going to have a good amount of money. So if they want to make a move, that's when they would do it, right? Like in the next couple of seasons, you have to factor in like right now, I believe going to this season, they have like less than even $1 million in space, or they might even not.
They don't have any.
They don't have any. Exactly. That's what I mean. So like, do you really think that the team's going to be looking to trade players to free money up, one, to sign free agents? No, that wasn't going to happen. Or you got to think, if you're trying to make a huge splash or a huge trade, you're going to have to trade somebody with a significant cap hit to be able to bring anybody back. So even if you're trying to trade away like assets, like let's say how like we were talking about before, like a Frost, like a Brink, like one of those first round picks maybe from 2025, how are you going to fit that guy in under the cap, right? Like, what are you going to be able, you're not going to be able to in the first place. And then you go to 2026, 27, and they have a projected $46 million. And like, that just shows where, at least for me, the money just points to where the team's head is at and where the staff's head is probably at. They're thinking, why are we going to bend over backwards in this off season? Maybe remove guys that we don't want to remove to make a big splash and add somebody when in the next 2 seasons we won't have to do that.
Right.
And
we'll have the leverage of the cap space.
Exactly, right? Like teams aren't going to say to you, well, okay, if I'll give you this guy, but you need to free up cap space. So if I'm going to take this big contract back, I want more assets. And that's where the Flyers are getting to a territory where they don't have the leverage. They're losing trades,
Yeah.
things like that. I just think Briere and the staff, like, they're not going to want to. And I think, unlike Chuck Fletcher and his staff, it doesn't look like they're trying to make moves for the sake of making moves. They're going to make moves that make sense for the team, that are going to help build this team long term into a potential contender. So obviously, you have a Matvey Michkov come in. People say that accelerates things. I mean, I think in an ideal world, they would have wanted to add maybe some more talent, but I just think the cap space of the situation they're in, it doesn't make sense to paint yourself into a corner,
Plus,
lose more assets that you potentially might need to lose to free up cap space to do something like a trade or free agency,
well,
when you could just wait and add your players after, right?
yeah, no, you absolutely nailed it. And also, like, to the talent point, like, are we so sure that a lot of these guys are not going to be like none of these guys will develop into be a star? Why not wait to see if they had a big year, a lot of these guys. What happens if Owen Tippett puts up 90 points this year? I'm not saying he will, but what happens? The conversation changes. What happens if Frost is a 70-point player in the league? What happens if a Farabee puts up 80 points? I don't know what's going to happen, but neither do they, neither do you, the ones that are critical. Why not get better clarity on it when these guys are now entering their mid 20s, where they're finally becoming real veterans in the league? I don't care what they say on television. We have disproved that over and over and over again on this show, about player like Travis Konechny was benched at 23 by Lane Vigneault. Like, the reality is that these players need time, and I think the Flyers need that clarity before they go out and decide what they really need to upgrade. And they don't know exactly quite yet. It's not so clear. And the one guy I do, or the two guys I do agree with people, and I empathize with their frustration, as in, why are these guys not moved? I think you nailed it as the reason why, but I can understand why people look at the roster and go, Scott Laughton and Rasmus Ristolainen need to be traded. Like, I don't think so from a talent standpoint and a competitive standpoint, but from an asset management, cap management, it does make sense with Noah Cates and Ryan Poehling being here, and Garnet Hathaway, and who knows what's going to happen with Denoyer or any of these other guys we're bringing in, or if Luchanko is ready early. There is time to move Scott Laughton, though. There's plenty of time. He's
Yeah.
still locked up, and his value increases in a playoff run. So we could end up adding another first round pick going into this draft for all we know. And that would give us 4, which would be insane.
That would be nuts. Yeah.
Right. And then Rasmus, maybe you're not getting a first round pick because of his price, but if you look at the contracts that were handed out for big defensemen, they're still at a premium.
Look at
And
that Zadorov contract, and I'd argue Risto might be better than him.
who's Joel Edmondson, who's at
Yeah.
like the end of his career, got a $4 million deal from for 4 years or 3 years or something like that from LA. It's like Risto might actually have more value at the trade deadline as well. And yes, I do believe the Flyers will move on from them, but they're not going to be rushing to move on from guys who are 26 years old, and Travis Konechny, 27 years old, that have 6-7 years of really good hockey left in them. They're going to look for guys who are 30 and up, and I've said this already, 30 and up, and those are the guys that they're going to look to move on from. And you keep a guy like Sean Couturier because he could play third line center in his mid 30s, probably on this team moving forward. Even if he's overpaid for a third line center, he's going to be an elite third line center.
Yeah.
Outside of that, they moved on from Atkinson. Like, they're doing it. They might not be doing it at the speed or exactly what you have in their plan. And I will say this, and you can, if you guys watch Snow the Goalie and you watch Anthony Sanfilippo and Russ Joy go at it, I very much more lean towards Anthony Sanfilippo than what Russ Joy is saying. I think that is revisionist history. I think he's making his own narrative and talking about this. Oh, we want this now. We want this now. And it's like, people want to rebuild, but when it's actually in front of their face, they almost can't handle it, which, not all rebuilds look the same either. Like, if you
Yeah.
look at Chicago, and I'm sorry, Vasili, I keep ranting. If you look at Chicago and you look at San Jose, does it look like they want to still be at the bottom of the league? Did they add talent? Like, did
Yeah,
they
they
just
did,
go?
right?
They didn't want to just be like, oh, we want to be the worst team in the league again. They got Bedard, franchise player.
You need to put veterans around young guys, right? Like
You
to help them out.
tanker. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Yeah, but like I just wanted to say, like, and add in, like, to the point, like, there's a lot of young guys on the team. They're not still at their full potential yet. So, people are asking, oh, like, are calling, okay, trade Farabee, trade Frost, trade all these guys to bring better players in. Firstly, these guys haven't reached their full potential, so you could be trading at a disadvantage where, hey, maybe they play this season, maybe they get better, maybe you trade them later and recoup even more or upgrade, the positioning even more. And then to your point, like with Lawton and with Risto, like in my experiences and just analyzing the league, usually the most value is at a trade deadline. So why wouldn't you wait for that point, especially if you're not in contention, and then cash in at a deadline versus like an NHL offseason where why would a team say, oh, I'm going to spend a first round pick on, Scott Lawton on July 2nd when I can go out in free agency and sign a Scott Lawton. I don't have to pay you, whatever you want in draft capital. So I think the trade deadline is, if you're going to look for some of those older guys, that would be probably where the
Yeah.
Flyers have an earmark to move them.
Perfect. Very well said. Totally agree. But would you I'm gonna pull up the Flyers roster here.
Sure.
Pull up that tweet about the Flyers ages and go through that real quick. But I just want to remind everybody, please like and subscribe if you have not to this channel. Hit the notification bell for notifications and also follow us on iTunes and Spotify. And give us a rating there if you can. So we'll read that tweet out. I'll pull up the roster here. We'll go through the lines and then we'll end it on that. We'll go through Flyers and Phantoms lineup real quick, and
Yeah,
that'll be the
sure.
end.
Well, my thoughts is just this kind of ties into the last topic perfectly in my eyes because
Right.
it says like, well, not to say that the Flyers aren't in a rebuild, but some people are stating, well, the Flyers aren't really rebuilding. They need to tear it down to the studs. They're not young enough. I mean, firstly, if you look at the lineup coming up in 2024-25 here, the Flyers potentially have 12 guys, 25 or younger on the team coming up. So those 12 would be Ryan Paling would be 25. Noah Cates would be 25. Owen Tippett would be 25. Morgan Frost would be 25. Samuel Urson, 24. Joel Farabee, 24. Egor Zamula, 24. Cam York, 23, Bobby Brink, 23, Tyson Forrester, 22, Jamie Drysdale, 22, Matvey Michkov, 19. That doesn't even count in like a guy like a Hunter McDonald, or maybe like an Emil Andre or something like that, right? So I just think that for anybody saying, hey, well, the Flyers aren't really rebuilding, how many players are on the opening night lineup? 18, 19 players, and they have 12 guys that are 25 and younger, but they're not rebuilding, obviously. And I just think it's asinine to think that way. Like, they're obviously gearing up and looking to get younger. And you could say, hey, not trading Scott Lawton is stopping that, not trading Ristolainen, not trading some of the older guys is
Yeah.
stopping that. But look in the past, 10, 15 years, at teams that tear it down completely to the studs with no veteran presence, no, veteran players for these younger guys to learn from, usually it doesn't work out very well. So I think
No.
if you just look at the lineup, like they have a ton of young guys, you need to have some veterans just to help, help them out in terms of the everyday NHL grind, also to learn from in general. So I think they're doing it a smart
It's
way, right? Where it's not so young that these guys get like into a spiral where, let's say it's like a huge losing streak, you can't dig yourself
right.
out of it. Like that could really kill confidence, could really kill players' development. So you want to you want to, like tread that fine line of, okay, you got your young guys in place, you still have some older guys, but it's not too much of either. And I think the Flyers and Briere and the staff are really kind of, meshing that and blending that line together perfectly, in my opinion.
Yeah, and they're growing together, and you can still move some of these pieces moving forward. Like nothing of here is set in stone. And again, I go back to this. There is a false narrative, and it's completely media driven. I don't care what anybody tells me. Stop thinking of players who are 23, 24, 25 years old as full on veterans in the league. There are some players that are that, namely Connor McDavid. Most players are not fully developed in their mid 20s. It's just not true. It's not true. And if you look at majority of players in the league, that is the case with them. You can find outliers for me. Still not true. Those players continue to get better. They max out at about 27 years old. Look at what McDavid did. His numbers even speak to the fact that he has gotten better and better and better every year until now. He's in his prime and he's putting up 150-point seasons. Look at a guy like Kucherov, who got better and better and better until he hit the age 30. Like the idea that these players are who they are at 24, 25, it's just not true, especially for defensemen and goalie. And the easiest I would say to project maybe is a winger in the earlier ages, the hardest being defenseman and goalie, and then centerman are harder. So it's just like, I don't buy that narrative
Yeah.
whatsoever. And there's plenty of evidence to show it's not the case.
Especially defensemen too. Like defensemen usually are like 24 to like 28 even at certain points. Look at Sanheim. Like he had his best season last year. Like he wasn't done developing.
They typically go up and down until they hit a plateau of being like, hey, this is what I
am now. Yeah.
Right. And that's about 27, 28 years old. Like that is the reality of this.
So Yariv, like for this list here, like did you put these lines together? Or is this what Puckpedia gave you off the hop?
No, so Puckpedia gives you like a goddamn mess. So I put this together. And it's not a mess, but like especially where the Flyers roster is, like it's done, kind of like thrown together. I put this together for the NHL lineup, assuming, what we know so far based off of last season. I don't really know. Like, again, I put together that top line of Forrester, Couturier, and TK just off the sheer fact we saw that last year. And I could see Tortorella having a ton of trust in Forrester again and maybe wanting to try that again as the top line. We have no idea what the lines are going to be like at this point. I've heard the Michkov, Frost, Tippett thing thrown around. Maybe. Personally, I would love to see Michkov with TK. I understand why they would want to put him with Frost, though, being, maybe the best playmaker on the team, I guess, surface level. And then Owen Tippett on his wing. We assume Joel Farabee will be with Lawton and Brink because we saw it last year, but we also saw Brink with Frost and Tippett. For all we know, Michkov could start with Lawton and Farabee, or with Lawton and Forrester. Like the lines could be very weird, but I do suspect that they'll try to keep Michkov on the right side. Having said that, the transition into the NHL playing on your off wing might be a little harder. There could be an option here, considering he is a lefty and this team has an abundance of right-handed wingers, that maybe they do try him on the left side as well. But again, you have him on his off wing, let him be his biggest strength. And then that last line, we saw it together with Noah Cates, Ryan Poehling, and Garnet Hathaway. I mean, this makes complete sense to me. I will say, actually, I just realized, let's move Ronnie Attard up here because he is not waiver exempt. There is a chance that he gets taken. But if he were to go through waivers, so I don't know what the Flyers are going to do with that. You can see the cap space, 1.7 million. I would say they would be safe to waive Delorier. That will save them about 1.1 million, but that might not matter anyway because they're still over the cap. And they might need to go LTIR as well. If you watch the screen and I put Ryan Johansson on LTIR, their cap overages don't matter anymore. So this could be what we see as an opening night roster. The defense, pretty much the same as last year. We don't know exactly what it will be, but it's based off that balance. We know York and Sanheim work together. We know we want to see if Drysdale can fill in the Sean Walker role from last year with Nick Seeler. And we know Egor Zamula and Risto played at times, but hopefully Risto is healthy this year. And then obviously Sam Ersson is most likely going to be the number one with Fedotov playing a backup. I guess, and enter your thoughts there.
Yeah, I think at least with the lines you put together, this is probably what I would have had as well. And I think it just starts off the basis of what you said, like Couturier, Konechny, Forrester. That was such a good line for an extended period of time. I could totally see Tortorella wanting to go back with that as a base and kind of start the season off that way, especially since he knows that they can be trusted defensively. And it's all three players, right? Like like Couture, Konechny specifically are PK guys. I wouldn't be surprised if we start seeing Forrester eventually become a PK guy. Like obviously there's a lot of penalty
Yeah,
killing players on this team,
good
but like
point.
if you subtracted a lot and eventually at the deadline, maybe that's when you would shift Forrester into like that penalty kill type role to end the season. Still a very young player. Like you got to look at Travis Konechny. When did he start penalty killing? So there's still time yet for Tyson Forrester. I totally wouldn't be surprised as those top two lines being what they are on opening night. Like Michkov with Frost, it just makes a ton of sense. Your best playmaker. Also, too, like Michkov's a really good passer as well. Obviously, he's known more for the shooting prowess, but I think you have a guy like Tippett there, it just makes sense because he has a rip of a shot. So when Michkov does make those silky smooth passes, you want a guy that can finish. So I'd imagine they're going to want either at all times either a guy like Konechny around Michkov, a guy like Tippett, a guy like Forster, also another person that can shoot the puck and do it well. So I would imagine a combination of those three guys will probably play with him throughout the season at some point.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
then
I'm sorry to cut you off, but everyone should recognize that he will be like lines will not stay the same all year.
no, of course, exactly right. We saw last season how much things got juggled at points. It's interesting with Lawton, like Brink and Farabee, because I do think they want to put Lawton in a third line role because I mean, ultimately, I think they are looking to trade him at some point, no matter what they say. Like
Yeah, I think so too.
at a certain point, like you have to realize this team's contending window probably isn't until around 2026, maybe early 2025, and then they're going to really try to aim for that contender status between probably 2025 and 2028 and really establish themselves. At that point, at his age, is he going to be a guy that can bring the same things for you on a nightly basis? Who knows? And I think Paling is a perfect replacement for a guy like him. They really do similar things, similar skill sets. So who knows? Like maybe they try to put Paling up there into the 3C role. He did do well last season, so I don't think it would be totally out of the ordinary to see like Paling in the third line to start versus Lawton. But you have to be mindful of the fact that they're trying to probably move him, so starting him out on that fourth line is that can be beneficial for that. So we'll kind of see what happens there. But yeah, Paling, Cates, Hathaway makes sense. They were a killer line last season as a checking
Yeah,
line. So I mean that I think probably is the most evident fourth line, and then Delorier probably maybe works his way in against teams that are tougher, maybe that have like
sure.
fighters. Like if you're playing the Rangers and Rempe's in, like you probably put Delorier in as well, so you don't get
Maybe
thrown around.
rotating him in for Bobby Brink. Maybe that'll be the case again this
But
year.
who knows? Because like if Brink starts off and is really effective on the power play, and he's like with Michkov, would you want to take him out? So it's going to be interesting to see because I do think that they're a little strapped in the sense that like if you want to get Delorier in, are you really making your lineup any better?
That's
And
why I
this is
think he could be waived.
yeah, and we talked about this offline in the past that like he seems to be the odd man out, and just for the fact that the Flyers have mentioned they don't really want to dip into LTIR if they don't have to.
Yeah.
Well, if they keep Delorier on the roster, they're going to have to dip into LTIR, and they're not going to be able to
If
potentially bank that cap space, and that could hurt them in the future with even more dead cap, especially if they have like
right.
bonus overages and stuff. So it'll be interesting to see what
It
happens with Delorier.
if they send down Delorier and Addard, they're under the cap and they don't have to put in anyone. I do think there's a chance Addard could get taken, but he is, I think, 25, 26
That's
already.
what I mean. You got to think.
So, yeah, I don't know if 100% he would get taken. So there is that opportunity there.
Yeah.
And again, we don't really know what's going on with Johansson and what his situation is. We assume he's going to be on an LTIR or at least on the IR. That's what he stated. That's what Briere stated. But you can see for all those people who are asking if Bobby Brink and Oliver Bonk will be on this team, where are they going to play? Like who are you going to put Bobby or Denver Barkey in? Did I say bump? No, Denver Barkey in the lineup. Oh, are you going to play him over Bobby Brink? That wouldn't make any sense.
Yeah, those
You're going to
guys are
play
going
him,
back to junior for sure.
right? Like
Like
100%. Even Bonk, who let's say he is NHL ready, where are you going to play him? You're
like
going to
and this
play
is
Play him as a number
Yeah.
6.
And this
Why?
is too, like, that's just going to stunt his development, in my opinion.
Right,
Like,
exactly.
and like, this is too without even looking at, like, well, they have Adam Yinning, who might be in the mix. They have Emil Andre. Like, what if Andre
And we'll go into the
impresses?
Phantoms too. But yeah,
Yeah, and I think your point too with Adern's spot on. Like, he's about 25, 26. It's pretty much make or break for him coming up. How many other teams league wide have their own Rodney Adern in their system? So it makes me think that
he
the
could get,
chances of
yeah.
him getting claimed are probably slim. He just hasn't shown a ton at the NHL level. So, like, why are you gonna, make that claim if you're another team? I don't know. Maybe they see something they like, but I just think it would probably be slim, and the Flyers could probably sneak him through, in my opinion.
Yeah. And again, I think there's a good chance that him and Delorier, it wouldn't leave them many extra men. Eric Johnson would be the only one, but then they can worry about a call up from there. They're still gonna have to deal with LTIR at some point unless they move salary out of here. But the reality is they'd have to find a way to move Johansson, most likely.
Yeah.
Or at the very least send him to the minors because that would free up another 1.1 million of cap space, which would be
Yeah.
ideal. To get that little bit of leverage, you can swing a guy from the AHL like Tuamala or bring Delorier back up. Which I think is what they would prefer to do is to send Johansson down instead of Nick Delorier. But I don't know if they're going to have that luxury with
And
the injury.
with the defense, Yariv, like, I think it's pretty accurate as well. Like, I think York and Sanheim will start off. They're such a good pair last season. It will probably start like something like this, though I wouldn't be surprised that at one point maybe we see York, Drysdale,
Yep.
Ristolainen, and Sanheim, because Risto and Sanheim have played well together. I think York and Drysdale will be interesting to see what that type of pairing could be. Two younger
Yeah.
defensemen to work off each other offensively.
Yeah. Especially if
So
Zamula maybe gets benched at
yeah.
Times.
Or if
Um,
Zamula plays a little better, they might have more faith in, doing a Zamula Sealer pairing and say, hey, like, Sealer could be the defensive guy. Zamula, you worry about the offense.
well, that's the
Let's
thing.
put
These
like
are
York
balanced.
and Drysdale together, right?
Yeah, I mean the top line is a two-way. They're both two-way defensemen, but
Exactly.
the
Yeah.
other two pairings, you have the more offensive guy with the more defensive guy in both scenarios, and you have size on both lines. So like, I don't know. Again, I think the power play is kind of up for grabs. I do anticipate Matvei Michkov to play on the top line. And I did want to point out a tweet by Appleyard. I mentioned it earlier. So at 19 years, and this again, shout out to Alex Appleyard. This is his Twitter, so go over there. He's got such great information all the time. 19-year-old Michkov is just about to enter a 2+ season, a draft plus 2 season, and has already played 118 games versus men. Compare that to Brink, 3.5 years older, has played 121. Addard, 5.5 years older, played 158. Cates, 5.5 years older, played 161. Drysdale, 2.5 years older, played 164. And Forrester, 3 years older, played 184. So just put that in perspective. Like, I do imagine Michkov will be in the top 6 day one. His defensive game is not going to be up to snuff to where Tortorella likes it, but I don't anticipate that Tortorella is not walking into this season knowing that already. And with Michkov's work ethic and his hockey IQ, which outside of Sean Couturier might be the highest IQ on the team already. His IQ, because Couturier's hockey IQ is just through the roof. People are not aware of that. He definitely future NHL coach material, in my opinion. But I do suspect that Michkov will not have too hard of a time adjusting to the NHL. And you've mentioned this, Vasili, I think on this podcast a few times, that he's already played on NHL sized rink. Yeah, you mentioned in the episode, Steve, that he's already played on NHL sized rinks as well. And that's been like, I think majority of the rinks that he's played on in the
Scott
cage.
and Sochi's rinks were both NHL size. So if
Right.
whenever he was playing at home for any of those teams, he was playing NHL sized ice. Actually, the majority of KHL teams use NHL sized ice, except for a handful. So it's really a handful of times he wouldn't have been playing on that ice unless it's like international play or something like that. So for people to say, oh, well, it's going to take a long time for him to adjust to the NHL ice, I mean, it's just not the case. Like, he's played on it for years. And I think to your point in Appleyard's tweet, like, it's great that you brought it up, Yariv, because it just shows, like, even though some of these other players that you mentioned, like, they're playing against men is, AHL level and at the NHL level, you can't discount the KHL and the fact that it's a very talented league. It's probably just on par with the AHL, if not even a better league in terms of maybe overall skill. Like the AHL might be more of a little more like defensively oriented, a little more physical than the KHL would be. So that might be something he needs to get used to, is more of the NHL physicality. But in terms of like playing with highly skilled players, he's already done that from, since 16 years old in the KHL, and essentially has been a point a game guy since 16 in the KHL, then a few games here and there. And I've mentioned this to you many times. Like, you think about how well he produced in the KHL. This is going to be the most talented roster he's ever played with ever in his career. Like, he is playing with the most talented players he ever will have been in the NHL. So how is he going to be able to capitalize on all that? Especially if you look at it, you compare the KHL where he wasn't playing with as talented of rosters.
Playing on one of the worst teams in the KHL.
Still putting up a ton of points. So you'd have to imagine with way more talented guys, that might even unlock more skill, more potential in his game. So I think it's just something to be excited about with that.
Yeah, and if you watch some of those Sochi games, like there were plenty of times that he set up his teammates and they just would flub the play. Again, I don't want to knock those guys too much, but they're not on his caliber. And, it's an interesting
They're not on
point.
the caliber of some of these guys in the NHL here.
That's why I'm so curious to see even like this, because one, I think Tyson Forrester playing with Frost and Tippett could be sick.
Agreed.
But I'm really curious to see, because, you have Couturier there who can make up for any of, assuming that he's back to health.
All the defensive acumen, right, is there with
exactly.
Coach, so.
He's watching any turnover made, and then you just let Konechny and Michkov just wreak havoc on the opposition. And this is the problem with everybody wanting the Flyers to make moves. Like, what happens if this team, again, on the surface level, I'm not saying this is a playoff team, but what happens, because of the division, otherwise I see them exactly where they were last year, and with a better power play, they would have made the playoffs. It's really the loss of Carter Hart, which is the biggest loss to this team. We'll see how Fedotov does. But it's obvious that, Michkov is going to be a serious weapon for this team. And if he projects to do that 60-point season, which a lot of guys on his caliber have pulled off, especially in a draft plus 1 year, he's not coming in right after his initial draft, like Carlson and Fantilli and Bedard, right? He has that extra year of development there. We don't know exactly. They don't know exactly what's going to happen. They don't know exactly what Bobby Brink is, what Joel Farabee is going to do, because he was like at one point on pace for a point per game season, or like a 65, 70-point season, until that last month where he just kind of dropped off. So we don't know what version of Joel Farabee we have yet. We've seen greatness come out of Tippett where he looked absolutely dominant, and they're betting on that. They gave him an 8-year deal. So I think a lot of it is a little bit of wait and see mode, and then the moves will come. And then, like you said, the Scott Laughton, he's the only one in this lineup where I could see him being up for being shopped at the end of the year. And if it turns out the way people are saying it turns out, the Flyers will be out of a playoff spot relatively early, and they'll be able to ship him out. If they're fighting for a playoff spot, or if they're in a playoff spot, I hate to break it to you, Scott Laughton's probably staying on this team, and then will be shipped off in the offseason probably, because the team will look at it as like, well, the playoff experience is really important to us, and people might diminish that, but it is.
Especially for a young guy like a Michkov to get that experience in his first season.
Right.
So,
and if you want to get one of those top centers, I'm sorry, you package up those 3 first-round picks, shoot your way up the draft board, and try to draft in the top 10, which there will be a top forward available.
No, yeah, I totally agree. And then the last thing I want to touch on was the goaltending. Like, I think Erson's probably earmarked to maybe be your, de facto number 1, but it's probably going to be like a similar 1A, 1B situation where they're really splitting a lot.
They're hoping for that. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think Fedotov, like, people are really counting him out in a sense. Like, I've seen some takes and just people not really confident in his abilities. He really only had like a game or two in the NHL and like no time to adjust. Like, obviously it's the same situation. Like, the ice isn't really that big of a deal because he's played on NHL ice back in the KHL. I just think in general, like, the angles for goalies, not the ice, it's the angles. Like, every building, the angles are different. So as a goalie, you really have to learn that and have to study that and get familiar with that. So I think him kind of spending more time being around Philadelphia in the off season, being there training, I'm sure that's going to help with that and just getting used to, the new sight lines and things for like NHL arenas because they're structured very differently than
Yeah.
KHL arenas. And then a thing with Fedotov too is just he was the Olympic MVP only a couple seasons ago. Like obviously there's a chance the guy can fall flat on his face, but I just think that there's a lot of skill and he's so big that I'd be surprised like if he isn't a decent 1v goalie. So I think the Flyers should, hypothetically, if Erston, gets back to that first half of season form, they should have a pretty solid goaltending tandem as well. I mean, obviously, a lot of other teams in the division really made some additions and got better, but I think the Flyers will still be competitive in most games and will be right on the bubble just looking at the
Yeah.
roster.
And it's also the defensive assignments that he doesn't know. He didn't know how the team played. He wasn't even using his equipment. There's so
Yeah,
many
all that
reasons to
stuff.
give him the benefit of the doubt from that initial 3-game sample that you mentioned. So let's look at the let's look at the minors real quick here. We don't really know what they'll be, but if you look at the minors, I guess Ronnie Attard could be playing on this team. If he is, this is what I was saying. It looks like there are, like, if you look, Luchanko, Barkey, and Bonker on here, they are not going to be part of the equation in the AHL this year. If you drop Laurier down, you have full 4 lines. We do know that Bolton is available. Again, he's not here in the system yet, so that's why you don't see him over here. And Bjarnason, obviously, is not part of here either, and we assume Kolosov will be part of the team. So goaltending is set. The defense, for the most part, is set. But if you look at the depth, unless they're reaching into the ECHL again, which they might be, they have some guys down there that played kind of swing roles from both leagues. Brown being one of the guys that had success. We don't really know, but I suspect there might be another AHL signing. I know you mentioned Cooper Maruti has been rumored to maybe come back.
Yeah. So
They lost some talent.
Shout out to Tony Andrikidis. He like covers the AHL in depth, and he tweeted out earlier today that he's been told that he's going to return to the Phantoms on an AHL only deal, which makes sense. I mean, he had 56 points in 68 games, was one of their top guys.
Sure.
So I could see the Phantoms bring him back just for that reason, right? Extra scoring punch on a team that, I mean, like on paper, it looks like they do have some guys that can score, but when you take away Lazinski, you never know how an Abels or an Oscar Eklund are going to perform. So it makes sense why they want Marody back in the mix.
And I'm completely guessing here with the line. Like I know Richard plays both center and wing. I don't know if he's going to play center. I was just looking at the abundance of centers in comparison.
I wouldn't expect though,
Avon
like
plays
Gendron.
center.
I would expect like how you have it set up. Like Gendron would probably, or they would probably want him to be a top 2-line player. Like if you're looking to develop him for what he needs to be, which is a scorer, he needs to play in those scoring roles at the AHL level, right? So
yeah, and maybe Rizzo. And again, I didn't get to see Rizzo. Maybe he's the top center. Maybe it's Denoye for all we know. If he has a bounce back year. I don't know if Eklund. I assume he's not going to be above Richard and Lixell. I assume he's going to play more of a bottom 6 role just because they have more experience. We know Lixell is a swing guy in the NHL. He could make the Flyers for all we know. I don't anticipate it, but it could happen. I mean,
you never know what happens.
He looked really good at the end of the year. Like it took him a little bit of time, but by the end, he had some games where he looked highly effective. So we don't really know. And then Tuamala, I have no idea. You know what I mean?
Because Torch really liked him in camp last season.
Right.
So if he really impresses, they might just say, hey, like, let's get him in there.
Yeah. I think they're going to play it safe, keep the Phantoms competitive, keep the guys that they know they can compete. I'm not sure if Lixell is waiver exempt. I suspect he still is, probably for this last year here. So they'll probably ride on that. I don't think Abels is waiver exempt, but I don't think anybody knows who he is. And I think a lot of these guys are touted to be AHL players anyway. But we'll see. I mean, it could get interesting at camp, but I think this is most likely going to be the situation.
I think I think the defense is the most interesting for me. Like, I wouldn't expect the forwards to beat anybody out, but I really wouldn't be surprised if Andre makes the team. Like he did make the team last season, and they sent him back down. They said, well, he just needs some more seasoning. He played a full year down in the AHL. Got playoff minutes.
He was their
You know,
best
looked
offensive defenseman.
yeah, looked good in AHL time. And like, what were the Flyers terrible at last season? It was the power play. And I mean, he is a good power play quarterback, obviously at the AHL level, at the SHL level, but I could totally see him making it. And like, he had 32 points in 61 games last year in the AHL. So I mean, he did pretty well offensively for a defenseman. So we will see what happens, but I just would not be surprised if Andre somehow gets in the mix
Dude,
here, especially even over an Adder, because I personally think the team probably holds him in higher regard than they would
I,
Adder
I
at this point.
I definitely think they do. I suspect no matter what the season, I said this last year, people obsess over opening night roster, where the opening night roster should be more focused on cap management and just your initial lineup
Yeah.
for the beginning of the season, because it will not be your lineup moving forward in the season. And again, they did that whole thing with Erson where they kept him in the NHL, where he really should have been playing in the AHL, getting warmed up and then getting that first call because he was waiver exempt. It ended up biting them in the ass. I don't think they should end up doing that again. I think if you, it's better to have Andre maybe start the first 5 games. You know, we don't know injury problems, or start first 5, 10 games in the AHL. Let him get warmed up. Let him get his confidence up, and then make his way to the NHL. Like,
Yeah.
he's gonna be part of this team. I almost have no doubt. But when you have Zamula, Johnson, Risto, you know, like, I'd rather have Adder sitting, right, than Andreas sitting, right, because he's much younger and he has higher upside. So it's like, at a certain point, you also have to weigh playing time, and it's okay for the Phantoms to be competitive in the beginning of the year, you know, because they're going to need Andre too. So I don't know. We'll see. Camp might change all of this, and that's why I like doing this, because you know you get a good look at what you think the roster will be, and then you really don't know. But if you look at it, the Flyers are the reason they said we're done and don't expect big moves. I mean, mostly everything at the NHL level is already filled out for a team that is not trying to win the Stanley Cup. They're clearly not trying to do that. They are clearly leaning in to next year's draft. That is obvious from the amount of money that they carry this year, the amount that's being removed, the amount of draft picks. It's just like politics. Follow the money. It's there. They're showing you what their plan is. Whether it'll work, we don't know yet, but they have the opportunity to make it work,
Yeah.
and they will have a larger window than anything we have seen from any one of the last two GMs.
You got to wait and see, right, before we be critical here. Like, they obviously haven't executed major parts of their plan. So next offseason for me will be the real telling factor. I think that
Well,
will be when you kind of see
sorry.
some moves getting made, at least in my opinion, or at least the start of trying to make some moves and, you know, trying to add and make additions versus just strictly subtract, which has kind of been
Right.
what they've been doing the last couple
Right.
seasons here.
Yeah.
But we'll see too, right? Like, everybody's acting. I know Briere said, "Hey, well, you know, if we don't get any trades done or signings done the first couple of weeks, we're probably going to be done." At the end of the day, like, the offseason is still, like, there's still 2 months left pretty much of the offseason. Anything could happen. So
And
keep your mind open, right?
and to be honest, has anybody seen any of Briere's moves coming? They
Not
always seem
really.
to happen in like a stealth way, and you didn't hear a rumor about it, and it just happened. And you know, all these people are complaining about what he didn't do this year. Look at everything he did last year. I don't care if you're obsessed with focusing on what they do every offseason. I don't look at that. I look at it as a long plan. If they weren't able to do it in the first week of free agency, okay, I'd rather win a trade. I'd rather make the right deal than force a deal. And I think
Yeah,
Briere's done enough already in his short tenure to buy him grace and to
agreed.
understand that he does have a pretty good plan here in place.
Well, typically when you force the deal, you lose the deal.
Right.
And just look at Chuck Fletcher. He was trying to make moves for the sake of doing it to shake stuff up. And most of the deals that he was in, he lost. Right. So, like,
Yeah.
you got to look at it that way. So I think Briere, you know, was a smart negotiator. He wants to use leverage to his own benefit. And I think we're kind of seeing that if he is negotiating right now or kind of has anything on the back burner.
Yeah. Absolutely. Um, I don't know why, but my options to turn off screen share. There we go. All right. Let's end it on that, dude. Anything you want to leave our audience with?
Not too much. I mean, like, we just want to say thank you for all the support over the draft and like free agency weeks. We really saw like all our numbers go up. Whether like it was YouTube, flyersnittygritty.com. So we appreciate that support. And we're gonna continue to have, content on the site throughout the summer. Whether it's news, breaking or just like analysis of like the roster or certain, fun articles and pieces. We'll have stuff up on there, and the podcast obviously is going to keep going the whole summer. So we're going to continue talking Flyers and just getting into some off-season shenanigans. So
Yeah, and like Vasili said, we go all through the off season. We do not stop, so this show will be regular once a week as we move forward. And again, just want to remind everybody, please like, subscribe if you've been getting to this point. That's a humongous help to us. Hit the notification bell for notifications. Follow us on iTunes and Spotify for the audio versions. Give us a rating there as well. It's immensely helpful to us. It's like the best way to support us is the reviews on the audio and the subscriptions on the YouTube and the likes as well. And also shout out to our sponsor, Jim Steaks at 4th and South. Make sure to go get yourself a cheesesteak from Jim's. They are now open again, so go get yourself a cheesesteak through the summer. And also shout out to Public Summit Adjusters, 215-752-0560. Go there for all your insurance adjustment needs. Have them check your insurance claims and let them be your weapon against your insurance company. Again, 215-752-0560. And once again, shout out to our partnership with Sports Spider. Go to there to be able to track all of the NHL teams, but definitely the Philadelphia Flyers and all of the content. They will be your aggregator for news. Vasili, great job. Again, thank you everybody
you too,
for listening.
brother.
Thanks, brother. Thank you everybody for listening. We love you. And remember, always stay green.